Call this meeting to order. Please rise and join me for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me for a moment of silence. Thank you. Welcome to the Woodbury County Board of Supervisors. Please silence your phones if you have them. First on the agenda is citizens' concerns. Anybody have any items they'd like to discuss that are not on the agenda?
I think you got a hot mic. How's mine sound? Here, how about you take this one? Well, they're all loud, aren't they?
Again, any citizens' concerns before we get started?
Connie Barrett, advocate. I didn't appear last week mainly because I don't feel as if I'm being heard. However, reading the minutes from the Rolling Hills meeting, I see elimination of program is being determined by Dennis Butler and Dawn Mincer. These appear to be cuts to me. Given this information, the move is looking like a done deal, and we need to prepare individuals who are going to lose services. Every action you complete causes an equal and opposite reaction. Individuals and families need to be informed in advance. This is not emotional rhetoric. It is fact. They need to know. These are services that were decided worthy and necessary by our populations through planning and public input. Again, these appear to be cuts in services. People also need to know if the CEO and Dennis Butler's eliminations include reductions in financial eligibility. Again, every action you complete causes an equal and opposite reaction. In all my years as the advocate, I have never seen a Board of Supervisors act with such lack of public input and transparency. Can we please allow total transparency through public input? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I wonder, since a citizen named budget analyst, and apparently is leaving now, but if that budget analyst has an opportunity to respond to the accusation or not.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on that because I don't know if it's an accusation or what, but these are proposed reductions, and 3 of them actually are one-time expenditures, which would be reduced either by Rolling Hills or by Sioux Rivers. The other one is a proposed decrease in the funding of a certain entity, and that still has to be approved by the Region Board of Rolling Hills if we do go with Rolling Hills. So I am not making any decisions, neither is she. She's giving suggestions back to Rolling Hills Board. But again, 3 of the 4 cuts are cuts that would have to be done by Sioux Rivers. So I want to make that very clear.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Any other citizen concerns before we move on? I would ask for a motion for approval of the agenda with the exception of County Treasurer Mike Clayton wants to remove item 12.
Second. Or I'll move it.
Motion by Wynn, second by...
Me, I'll second.
Okay. Raddick got the second.
That was on the motion, though.
Oh, you did? Okay, Christian.
Somebody that way.
Heard a voice. Any other discussion?
I did.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries 5-0 to approve the agenda with the exception of item 12 for the county treasurer. Sir.
I think you need to add one more, is moving the WIC budget up ahead of all the other budgets, so he has an appointment later on.
That's right. We also have a request to do a budget review in advance. Right now? Or is that at the beginning?
Well, I see it is on the budget. He thought he was last. I see it is on there, so you don't need to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Disregard that. Items 4 through 9 constitute a consent agenda of routine action items to be considered by one motion. Items pass unanimously unless a separate vote is requested by a board member. Number 4 is approval of the minutes of the January 2, 2018 meeting. Number 5 is approval of claims. Number 6, approval to appoint Aaron Galing to the Woodbury County Conservation Board. Item 7 is human resources, approval of memorandum of personnel transaction. Public bidder. 8A is approval of notice of property sale resolution for parcel ending in 002, also known as 3320 Parkland Place, setting for Tuesday, January 23rd at 4:35. Approval, 8B is approval of notice of property sale resolution for parcel ending in 003, also known as 29 17th Street, setting for Tuesday, January 23rd at 4:37. Item 9 is secondary roads. 9A, consideration of a permit for use of the county right-of-way for an underground utility near Odo for Western Iowa Telephone. 9B, consideration of a permit for use of the county right-of-way for an underground utility near Hornick for Western Iowa Telephone. 9C is consideration of a permit for use of the county right-of-way for an underground utility near Smithland for Western Iowa Telephone. I will move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by DeWitt, second by Taylor. Any other discussion or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries 5-0, Mr. Holder. Item 10. This is a discussion for an action item for emergency repairs to the Little Courthouse located in Hampton, Iowa.
I could have fixed it.
Quick. I'll have to get our project manager to do it.
We have someone to get down and maybe check out the mics, or I feel like the gain is turned up a little high.
Say the volume's just got to be way up.
People won't be featured to hear us.
The item before you is for an emergency repair, which was discovered last Friday at the Little Anthony Courthouse. I got a call from the treasurer, Mike Clayton, that said that people were cold in the building when they came in that morning. It was something like 48 or 49 degrees. I called to find out what the issue really was. They said they'd been, but the heat was working now, and they said they'd been resetting it. So I called Mike Clayton to find out from one of the employees what the real specifics were. Apparently the furnace has been intermittently working for quite some time, and they've been hitting a reset button to get it to fire to warm up and operate. So I told Mike that I would call a HVAC technician and have it checked out as soon as I could. I called 3 separate companies and tried to get a technician out to look at that unit on Friday. The concern was, with it being Friday and we were going into a cold weekend, that building could freeze up or something like that if we didn't have any heat. So I did finally get one company to come take a look, Rasmussen Mechanical. Came and looked at the unit. discovered it had a crack in its heat exchanger, and thereby told the employees that they would not restart the unit. Rasmussen Mechanical contacted me and said the unit, while the unit could be reset and run like they had been doing for quite some time, due to the current stipulations with their company, he would not fire that unit. The employees did fire the unit again, however. It's still in operation. However, there's some concern definitely with the cracked heat exchanger, and so we want to replace that unit as an emergency repair right away. I attempted to get 3 bids. I have received 2. I contacted 3 companies. One was not able to provide us a bid due to workload, but I did get 2 bids. One from Rasmussen Mechanical. That bid was $10,298, and one from C.W. Suter at $6,180. I would also recommend that we install some carbon monoxide detector in the space, which they currently don't have in the building, and also as part of this a learning energy efficient thermostat as part of the unit. So I'm requesting approval with the C.W. Suter bid and the addition of carbon monoxide detectors and learning thermostats.
Is that unit in stock then, is that? Or?
The unit is not in stock. They have to order it. I authorized the approval to place the order today around lunchtime.
Is it like 8 weeks like furniture, or is it 2 weeks? Or
no, we're hoping it'll be here Thursday, depending on what our weather does to the shipment. It may be here Thursday. We hope to install Friday. If it doesn't get installed Friday, I've gotten a key to the building from Mike Clayton, and I'll go in and check it on both weekend days and make sure everything's okay.
Is anybody working on there now?
They are working on it now, yes.
What are you doing to get by in the interim?
just burning the papers?
In the interim, the furnace is operating in the interim. There's concern, of course, with carbon monoxide poisoning or something like that. However, they've been operating for quite some time under this same scenario. So I think we're probably, I believe we're okay until we get it repaired as quickly as we
There's some sort of sensor in there right now, I assume.
There's not a sensor in there right now.
Can there be one that's temporarily placed in there?
We can get one and install it, yes. And that's what I'm recommending, yes.
Well, I would believe that this would qualify for an emergency situation.
I believe it does. I'll have to work with Dennis on how we allocate the funding for that. We'll look into some of our CIP projects or do a designated amendment for 2018 to take care of the funding on it.
I'll move Kenny's recommendation.
I will second Raddick by motion by Raddick and second by DeWitt for emergency action for repairs to the little courthouse located in Hampton. Other questions or concerns? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries 5-0. Thanks, Ken.
Thank you.
Item 11, approval of change order 5 for courthouse courtroom number 207 in the amount of $6,671.
This is a change order for the last courtroom we worked on. Ran into several different items. One of them was the overhead steel window framing structure, if you want to call it that, was deteriorated beyond what we could actually cut out and re-weld pieces in to repair. So that was part of the replacement. Also, there was a need to shim out the beams that the interior marble is adhered to. In the past, they used a product that we can't replicate in this day and age, and so we had to use a thinner type of caulking, if you will, or adhesive. And to meet the recommendations of that caulking adhesive, we had to lessen the gap between the marble and the beam, and to do that, we had to add some additional plating. Terry Glade, Terry, would you come up? Terry with CMB Architects is here and can explain some of this process.
Yeah, Kenny pretty much described it. We had to add additional steel to basically thicken the beam, so the gap was less for the marble. The old mastic that was used probably had asbestos in it, who knows, but something that could handle the thicker gap. We can't do that now. So that's part of the expense. And then back when we had originally described how these windows were constructed, the lower windows and the upper windows are kind of connected through this bent sheet metal construction, and that's the part that had deteriorated. And we couldn't replace it. We couldn't cut it out to replace it because that's what basically holds the two sets of windows in place. And so we had a new piece fabricated by a local company that actually snapped over the existing construction to take care of that. We actually thought that this courtroom was one of the better ones, and it actually turned out to be one of the worst ones as far as the window deterioration. So that's why there's more expense with this set of windows. This is the last courtroom of the 4, so that completes the 4. And I would say that these windows are in better shape now than when they were actually installed originally, because we've got some insulation in there, better paint finishes, that sort of thing. So I guess I would recommend approval of this change order, and I would also note that the Baker Group did not add any markup to those costs. It's a straight pass-through.
Will this come out of CIP now?
Yes.
Any other questions for?
I'll move approval.
Audubon will move it. I will second it. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Passes 5-0, Mr. Auditor.
Thank you.
Item 12 has been vacated, which brings us to item 13 with our county engineer.
Good afternoon, Mark Nair, Woodbury County Engineer. Following our completion of the 280th Street Bridge, we had a embankment failure near the ditch. Working with the Garrettson Drainage District, this is in our right-of-way, it was determined we needed to repair it. So we prepared plans and went out for quotes. I have the results of those quotes to share with the board and a recommendation for award. We received the low quote from Soil Solutions of Ottawa, Iowa for $14,446.10. I recommend award of that quote for the maintenance work in the 280th Street Bridge.
I will move that.
I will second. Motion by Raddick, second by DeWitt. Is this still going to be done yet, or currently, or ongoing, or is that what?
We'll have to see what weather conditions lead. I don't know if it's too frozen right now to do the work or not, so it'll be just done sometime before the conclusion of the current fiscal year.
Any other questions? All those in favor of the recommendation by the engineer, answer by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Mr. Taylor has item number 14.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. This is a reduction and reorganization in the Human Resources Department. And as you know, our Board of Supervisors during the last 3 years has looked at several different reorganization efforts. Planning and zoning with the Economic Development Department saving approximately $70,000, looking at a project management position that could save potentially over $730,000, And then we're looking in juvenile detention, as we have in the past, for some potential cost efficiency savings. And with our new director, Melissa Thomas, and her recommendation, we are looking to reorganize in the sense of delineating more clearly some of the specific duties that each person has within HR, and I believe from hearing from Melissa that that position that she wants fulfilled can be deauthorized with a taxpayer savings of $77,082.40. I would just reiterate that this would not be something that I think our board should do unless it was the recommendation of our HR director. And with that, would invite any comments. And I just want to say one other thing, if I can. I was very appreciative that Melissa said, doing so, we'll need to clearly define those roles and roll up our sleeves and really work. So with that.
Melissa Thomas, HR Director. I feel with the reorganization of the responsibilities throughout the staff, and I have a wonderful staff to work with, we've all gotten together and decided we're going to take this challenge on, and I think we'll be able to fulfill everything we need for the county and the employees as well. So, questions?
Just want to compliment Director Thomas for following through so swiftly on some of the ideas and recommendations you had even as early as the interview process. So
thank you.
It's good to see that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So with that, I would move to approve the deauthorization of the HR position, 9004, previously held by Melissa Thomas.
Second.
Motion by Taylor, second by to deauthorize the position in Human Resources. Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries 5-0, Mr. Rucker. Item 14B.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. This is revisiting the tabling of the Law Enforcement Center expansion projects B1 and C1, C2 until certain staffing and time parameters are met. I had a fairly lengthy discussion with our sheriff about a week ago, and was asking as a follow-up to Supervisor Raddig's question, I think in particular, on the timeline for staffing, because as you know, the LEC expansion is predicated on a certain staffing level. We talked about current numbers and whether or not it would be his recommendation that we continue to move forward, as it seems our jail population numbers have been down, and through a variety of efforts, looking at alternatives, placements, working with a consortium with the judges, and so on. And so I just wanted to have this as an information item to open that discussion, and preface it with this. I think the ultimate goal that we started with was the closure of Prairie Hills, and that $1.2 million energy waste and absolute expenditure down the drain that it was. I think we've successfully gotten there at this point. Prairie Hills, for all intents and purposes, is closed. We have fulfilled the promise of standing up a training center to fulfill that commitment very early on, and we've moved the kitchen, which took an enormous amount of lift from our building services director and the Baker Group, as well as CMBA. So I think we've made the big win. I think the current question is, do we, given that our numbers seem to be down from some varieties of efforts that we've made, impending 24/7 that we lobbied for and is now in the administrative rulemaking process, do we go forward at this point, or do we engage in the long-term planning to say, we'll go ahead if 2, 3, 4, 5 years down we're pushed to where we need to. And so with that, you have the backup materials kind of from yesteryear, but I thought we'd ask the sheriff's office or their representatives and have that discussion, because it's going to have a huge impact on our budget, not only as far as personnel, but also other needs. So those are my introductory remarks. And then I'd just add one. I've also asked Kenny what, short of doing the intake project, can be done to the LEC that were some current identified needs as well. So.
Major Wick Sheriff's Office, I think that is a great summation of where we're at right now, where the sheriff's at with the whole project. With the jail population being down over the last year, or manageable levels, I should say. I shouldn't say it's really down, but it's manageable. It's been manageable through the everything that Mr. Taylor mentioned. The sheriff's at a point now where he doesn't feel that anything is urgent or necessary to move forward with any of the intake project or anything like that. So,
how's the new kitchen working?
Great, working wonderful. You know, any major move like that, you've got to work out all the bugs and everything. But I think for the most part, it's worked well.
If it ever does become urgent, I'm not sure the board could react in time. And that's, I guess my question is the census being low, an issue your office sees as a sustainable trend? Or is it just good this year, next year we don't know, next year we don't know, next year we don't know?
Yeah, I would hate to stand up here and say things are going to be good for 5 years because I wish I knew that, but I wish the sheriff wishes he knew that, but we just don't. But they have been good over the past year with everything that we've done, we've implemented, working with the courts to make sure that we're getting people out of the jail that shouldn't be there, getting them bonded out, different things that we're doing, getting sentenced inmates out of the jail and down to the state penitentiary, open beds. Department of Corrections. There's a lot of our sergeants up in the jail are doing a fantastic job of making sure that the population remains manageable. So that it helps us out quite a bit.
But the sheriff is comfortable as?
Yes.
Okay.
One of the things that Sheriff Drew mentioned as well is that legislation right now, it looks like there's some bonding requirements that may change that may make it even more alleviating of that jail population, as well as 24/7, which we really haven't had stood up yet, and the mental health piece, which really is starting to come off the ground. So even if it's 8 or 10 per each of those programs sort of cobbled together, the cumulative effect, maybe 2.5 dozen, 3 dozen, somewhere in there, I think that only helps that trend. So,
correct. Bonding will be based on income rather than just a set bond amount. So lower income people have the opportunity to be able to bond out a little bit quicker than they could before.
Any other questions for Major Wick? Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Any more comments, Mr. Taylor?
my only comment would be the reason I included all the previous backup material. There has been a cost to this point, but I don't think it's a cost that goes by the wayside by any means, because we would have spent 15 months or more studying this thing if it come to what Supervisor Ung alluded to, that sort of consistent crisis point. So we have that long-term plan in my mind. I guess the only other thing I would say is we've previously voted to table these projects until a further time. I don't believe that there's any more necessary board action. But what I would ask is that our Building Services Department identified, along with CMBA and the Baker Group, projects of need within the LEC. And my question for them, if you're comfortable addressing this, is are there things that we should be looking at that are either health, safety, or comfort or code that we should be addressing with some of those dollars that we will not otherwise use unless we take action?
Sure. And Shane, you can step in if you want. there's a few things that we've identified that we could, as far as projects at the LEC that we could move forward on, and some of those were part of the intake projects or the projects that were to follow it, either B1, C1, or C2. AHU1, that's a main air handling unit on the first floor. It's got some issues actually, and it's 25 years old, so it's reached its useful life pretty much. But it's actually got some design issues, and it's a little bit flawed. It's got a plenum that comes up and it's actually splits, and doesn't give really the air handlers itself enough space to accurately produce the volume in the different ducts where it should be. And so that's a project we could take a look at, modifying that unit. It's a huge unit, so it would be a pretty good cost for a project. Also, at some point we need to build a detention IT room up in master control. They have right inside the control area itself is where all the equipment is that controls the detention doors, security, and so forth. Right now we have a air conditioner on wheels that helps assist with keeping that room cool because there's so much equipment in it. So again, the thought process was, as we did these projects, we would move that equipment out of that master control room and get it down into an IT room where it really belongs, where it's air conditioned properly to extend its life. Also, various HVAC controls and valves throughout the building that are in need of upgrade. A possible break room for the staff. We earlier identified an IT room to move those master control equipment down into. The unfortunate part is that is currently an area that's utilized as a break room, and so we would then need to relocate a break room in a different location for some of the staff. We could improve our dry goods storage area. That's where our current kitchen products are stored, food goods. We do need to put a hard surface floor in there, a tile floor. That's a small project, but it's a project. WCICC actually needs a larger IT closet. They have one, but it's overstuffed, and I think I saw John Lloyd. He can add to that if he'd like to, but it's it's actually packed. So they could use a little larger IT closet. The security software system for the detention area itself will soon be in need of an upgrade of some sort. Shane, any other things, or would you like to add some more to each one of these items, or any other items that you might think of off the top of your head?
That's a good list to get you started with. If there's any cost,
I don't know what the costs are. That's something we'd have to look into.
I guess my question for Mr. Taylor and or Kenny, but are we going to have our PREA needs met, or does this cause any concern with that to set this back?
As far as PREA goes, my knowledge level with PREA, and I assume would probably defer to the sheriff's office if there were specific needs that were being met with PREA that aren't going to be met.
PREA was, the new stuff was going to be PREA compliant, but as far as going back into the jail and helping with some of the doors and some different things there, none of that happened in any of these first projects you're tabling. B1, C1, C2, none of those really helped with your current jail, changing some doors and getting some shades up and stuff. None of that happened in any of these first three projects you're talking about. They were part of the future steps of the long-term plan.
Is there a way, or do you anticipate coming back with we're not looking necessarily, I don't think, and anybody can correct me if I'm wrong, to just spend money, but is there a prioritized list of things that we otherwise would have done on the line of HVAC, or that you could prioritize or put together some hard costs and we could take a look at as another separate agenda item?
Absolutely, yeah, I could do that. It would include some of these items I've talked about, but again, yeah, we could do that, but I don't have costs or anything, but yes, I could prioritize the list.
As I say, this sounds like something maybe we need to get people together and meet and come up with, you know, you working with the sheriff or his staff and maybe supervisor, you know, get together and.
The first one Kenny mentioned, the AHU1 modification. It is the one single piece that we were doing in this intake project that affected the largest number of people and the most concerns. With the age of that AHU and its massive size, we were coming in, replacing the coils and replacing the fans in it. Not the box, but we were getting it done. So that the whole first floor is not affected because that's the air handler that serves all the judges over there, as well as the sheriff's office, both sides of the civil end. So that would affect the biggest piece. But again, that's somebody to decide what's important.
Okay. Good. All right, thank you. Any other comments? Item 15, reports on committee meetings, please.
Mr. Go ahead.
Did you have one first? All right. Just had a couple related to Siouxland District Health. Had a meeting with their leadership, the Baker Group, Kenny Schmitz, Suter, and sat down. If you recall, there was about a $32,000 expenditure that we had in upgrading the boilers and the control system there. The long and short of it is this: we're spending more than we've ever spent in natural gas over there, which is counterintuitive. You would think with higher energy efficiency boilers. Well, what we've discovered is that there's some synchronization between the control panels that we're discovering isn't working now that we can see what we couldn't before, and we're ventilating to proper and adequate code parameters now, which costs more money on the energy side. There's going to be a cost that's going to be associated with getting things right. I can go into the details, but keeping it at a high level. Here's the thing. We initially outlaid about $32,000. There may be up to $50,000 in costs. So you look at that and you say $80,000 total. Stinks, right? Keep in mind, we were paying Johnson Controls annually $26,000 on a service contract. Over 10 years, it's $260,000. So the approximately 30% of what we're spending to get things right, we would have spent, many, many times more that on that controls contract. So bad news is we might have up to $80,000 in getting the system right, but we would have otherwise spent $260,000. Is that a fair summation, Kenny?
It is. The fortunate part about getting our front ends to each building hooked up into our HVAC system computer is now we can see what's going on. That's why some of this is starting to come to light. We can see what's working and what's not working, and therefore we can look into why isn't this working. Another example, it was just today. One of my technicians came in early this morning, and this was right at 8 o'clock this morning, and said, I just came through Trosper Hoyt on 4th floor, and it's 85 degrees in there. And I said, okay, well, let's get on the computer and see what's going on. So we got on the computer to see what's going on, and we noticed that our economizer, that's the thing that brings in the fresh air, is open, but it's not wide open like you think it would be if we were trying to cool the space down. And so we looked at the heat deck on the unit. I know you may not understand some of this, but the heat deck was 186 degrees and calling for as much heat as we could get. And so I said, well, there's got to be a problem here because everything, it looks as though this computer is trying to tell the system what to do, and it looks as though it's not doing what it should be doing. So send him back over to take a look. Asked him to take a look at the HVAC controls on it, and he looked, and he was at one end of the HVAC controls, and I was at the other end on the computer. And so we did an adjustment to see if the stroke would change in the pneumatics on it. And he said, yes, the stroke is changing, but the valve is not opening or closing. So this is just one example of what we're finding as we look into, or now able to see all these systems. We can see what's actually not working, identify what's not working, and go to it and actually see it, whereas we were not able to do that ever before.
The other one is, thank you, Kenny, appreciate it. The other one is Siouxland District Health in General. We did have a meeting for the second month. We did not pass a budget resolution. I've raised some concerns, and I think the board likewise has some of those concerns on the budget. They chose in the past to fund about $75,000 through the reserve fund of what was once grant funded, and we've made very clear that we don't backfill or shift to tax from what was once grant funded. So the biggest rub is there's about $200,000 of declining grant revenue, but the same amount of budget and tax asking, and the numbers just don't add up to me right now. Until they do, I'm not recommending passing a budget at that level nor at this level. So we're going to continue to work. Kevin's been good to work with, but until we have those answered, I'm worried that our reserve levels, when we promised to bring them up to 22%, my worry is that the loss and erosion of grant funds is going to be made whole by taxpayers, and that just, it can't be the case. So we're trying to get to the bottom of it.
So currently reserve funds are not likely being used to make up for those?
That's what I don't know. The reserve funds are down considerably. And what I'm looking for in the level of detail is what were the grant funds in fiscal years past with what was anticipated? Because there's times where they say we anticipate 361,000 coming in, so we match up a budget to that, but then only, let's say 250,000 comes in. Do you make the corresponding cuts in service mid-year, or is there an over-anticipation of revenue? So something's up. I don't know exactly what it is with a great deal of granularity.
Well, unfortunately, unless you decline the budget, like you said, there's how do you hold that accountable? To continually spend down reserves on something that was formerly grant funded. Eventually, it's not going to be possible, obviously.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it'll deteriorate the reserves to nothing if they keep that up. They are right now, at the end of 17, they're 254,000 short of the 22%. But we have to remember there are 2 years at 75,000 they used reserves to fund a grant that was eliminated. So really, you got to take into account the 150,000 that they're short 254. So the difference really is what we should replenish.
In fairness, we did reduce the allocation to them by anticipating some of their past overages. So, but at the same time, I think it's just down too far. And my biggest beef is to have nearly $200,000 of lost grant revenue, but a budget that stays the same means that's being made up somewhere. And I don't, again, have the finite detail to be able to pinpoint where that is, but we'll get there.
Is there any impetus to adjust the amount that we make whole?
I think if we can look at last year and the year before, and I'd like to see the year before that, the revenue income, and see if there's a disparity between what was relied upon and grant, then I think we'd have to, because the perfect example is we said we'd make whole to 22%, but they chose to do this homemaker home health program that relied upon $75,000 in grant dollars, and we said we will not make that whole. Otherwise, they could just continually say we'll keep these programs up that we're not getting grants for, and county taxpayers will pay for it. And I don't think that's right. So.
Mr. Chair?
Sure.
You've not yet put your committee assignments on the agenda for the board to vote on. Can we expect those next week?
Yeah, that sounds right. Karen and I were working on those yesterday and late last week, I think, so, yep, we'll have them on there.
Okay.
Any other committee reports? All right. Sure.
Just the region meeting will be tomorrow, or on Thursday, and we'll have some interesting information from there. I'll make some more comments on board concerns.
All right. Item 16, do we have any citizens' concerns once again?
Hello, Kathy Roberts, Siouxland Mental Health from Friendship House. As I imagine Supervisor Taylor's probably going to be talking about under board concerns is the letter that we have sent to Sioux Rivers, demand letter for the payment of the funds that were promised to us. And I guess I just want to say thank you to you guys for your support and see if you have any questions for us at Siouxland Mental Health. I know most of you have been to see Friendship House and Siouxland Mental Health. Marty, if you want to still come tour, we'd love to have you. But anything that I can help you guys with would be
Where was the letter? You sent a letter?
the letter was sent from Gooseman Law Firm to Sioux Rivers Region. It's also been sent to Woodbury County Supervisors, Plymouth, and Sioux County Supervisors as well.
Is that something that we should receive, or I know in the past when there's been...
If you receive it, then no,
It probably shouldn't be received, I think.
do you have a copy of the letter?
I do not. Do you have a copy, too?
But the crux of the demand letter is for Sioux Rivers to make
Follow
whole.
through on their, basically follow through on their agenda items from April to fund the, to fund Friendship House.
I know it was very recently sent, but have you received any responses?
No.
Well, thank you for copying us in on it.
Thank you.
Any other citizen concerns? Any board concerns? Mr. Taylor.
One, Mr. Chair, and I'm appreciative of Siouxland Mental Health, our largest provider, once again, that receives the majority of county tax dollars. Feel it's unfortunate that they have to bring legal petition in order for Sioux Rivers Region to have a semblance of doing the right thing. I won't hold my breath. I do want to address, though, at the beginning, the comments that the advocate has made. I'm hoping for a resolution this year that we can be honest about the region. And so these so-called cuts, I want to make it very clear that, and Dennis, please correct me if I'm wrong on this, Woodbury County is spending approximately $4.3 million.
That's correct, which includes the one-time, our share of the one-time.
Right. At 2850, which is what we're considering, we can only generate $2.9 million. That's a gap of $1.4 million. If we are going to stay in Sioux Rivers, we are going to have to find what the advocate, who's no longer here, calls cuts. If you say that something is one-time expense and then you don't do it the next year, in my book, that's not a cut. Second point, if we generate the maximum legally by Sioux Rivers Region, we can generate $3.1 million. I'm not a smart man, but I know that $4.3 million is a heck of a lot more than $3.1 million. And so with that, there's a gap of over $1 million. What are you going to do if you can't rely on reserves as Sioux Rivers Region has done? You have to match up to your expenditures. So the dishonesty to say that only by going to another region will there be cuts just is not true. Thank you very much.
Any other board concerns? All right. Number 19 is budget review discussion for 2019.
No, you got, you skipped one.
Chair, you have number
18.
You have an item before that.
Oh, I'm sorry. 18, Mr. Butler.
It's only Dennis that you skipped, so.
Okay, we're following a pattern we did follow last year. We're going to keep a running total on our current tax rates for fiscal year. That should be 19. We get that corrected? Okay, and the first slide here is showing what we actually certified for our current tax rates, which is $7.41 countywide and $10.37 rural unincorporated, which is townships only. In this case here, in comparison back to 16, that actually was a 4-cent reduction from the 16 budget year to our 17 current year. On the countywide, on a rural unincorporated, it's 13 cents decrease. So that's kind of our starting point, 741, 1037. Okay, with all the improvements and everything, we started, the worst case scenario, we started at 757 countywide, which is 16 cents above our current rate. And the rural unincorporated was 1019, which actually would be 18 cents below. The reason that's down and the countywide is up, there is a project called the Special Bridge Project that will not be in effect next fiscal year. Now, there will be some people who say, why didn't we decrease 1.3 million? Unfortunately, we had other funds for the last 2 years of local option sales tax to reduce that tax asking. In this case, for the current year, we used 512,000 of local option sales tax, which actually reduced the tax asking, I believe, to 788,000. So that's why there wasn't a $1.3 million decrease. Okay, the third page. This shows here the adjustments we did make. We made adjustments on the eliminating 2 positions or not approving those for the CIP, for self-improvement for conservation, and also adjusting the common center budget was a slight increase of $1,733. The effect of that is that we have reduced our tax asking that we currently started with. For the worst case scenario, we reduced that by 4 cents on a countywide and reduced it by 5 cents on a rural unincorporated. When we actually get to these numbers, sometimes they won't jive because we are rounding off. We usually do tax rates 5 digits. In this case, we're rounding up or down, so that's why you may have a fluctuation of a penny. But the gist of it is it's going down from the action you took last week. And we'll bring an update sheet each week, keep progressing like we did last year. So anything happens today will be reflected next year on this 4th sheet. They'll be coming up next week.
Past precedent is for a cut to be in green. It's a little confusing to see the
We can change that.
cut and the addition in red.
Okay, that's not a problem. We'll get her changed.
I'm fine with going to black and gold.
Any question on this? We will get the color changed. Thank you.
All right. Should we start the budget review? Recess for 5 minutes, or everybody okay?
Okay.
All right. Item 19, budget review discussion for FY 2019.